On a desolate stretch of highway cutting through dense, whispering woods, there stood a solitary diner, its neon sign flickering eerily against the darkening sky. This roadside haven, with its faded paint and weather-beaten exterior, seemed frozen in time. Lily, a timid and solitary girl with an air of melancholy, found herself driving along this isolated road as dusk descended. Her car sputtered to a halt, the engine coughing its last breath, leaving her stranded in the shadowy embrace of the forest. With trepidation, she made her way towards the flickering beacon of the diner. Pushing open the creaking door, Lily was met with an oppressive silence that hung thick in the air. The diner, bathed in a dim, sepulchral light, was devoid of patrons save for a lone figure behind the counter. The waitress, a pallid woman with hollow eyes, glanced up at Lily, her smile strained and unsettling. "Table for one?" she asked in a voice that seemed to echo in the eerie stillness. Lily nodded hesitantly and took a seat by the window, feeling the weight of the desolation outside pressing in on her. The waitress placed a menu before her, the pages yellowed and frayed, the items listed unfamiliar and unsettlingly vague. As Lily waited, unease crept over her. Shadows danced ominously in the corners of the diner, and the air seemed charged with an otherworldly chill. The only sound was the faint hum of a radio playing a discordant tune, each note sending shivers down her spine. Minutes stretched into an eternity, and Lily's sense of isolation deepened. She noticed oddities, faces in the patterns of the peeling wallpaper, whispers in the rustling leaves outside, and a strange, unshakable feeling that she was being watched. Desperate to break the suffocating silence, Lily summoned the waitress. "Excuse me, could you tell me where everyone is? This place feels empty." The waitress's smile widened, revealing rows of unnaturally sharp teeth. "Oh, they're around," she said cryptically, "just not where you can see them." Before Lily could react, the lights flickered, plunging the diner into darkness. Panic surged through her veins as unseen whispers and phantom footsteps closed in around her. She fumbled for her phone, its feeble glow providing scant reassurance in the encroaching blackness. With a sudden jolt, the lights blazed back to life, revealing the diner's ghastly secret. Faces pressed against the windows, ghostly figures lurked in the shadows, and the once empty seats were now occupied by spectral patrons, their hollow eyes fixed upon her. Heart pounding, Lily bolted towards the exit, the chilling laughter of unseen entities echoing in her ears. She burst through the door, gasping for breath, only to find herself back on the deserted highway. The diner nowhere in sight. Haunted by the memory of that harrowing night, Lily sped away, the echoes of her screams lost in the haunting embrace of the backwoods. The diner remained an enigmatic memory, a macabre tale she would recount, a cautionary whisper on the lips of those who dared venture down that desolate highway. As Lily sped away from the haunting diner, her mind raced with confusion and terror. The road ahead seemed endless, surrounded by towering trees that seemed to lean in, whispering secrets she couldn't decipher. She glanced in her rearview mirror, half expecting to see the eerie diner looming behind her, but there was nothing but the winding road disappearing into darkness. Trying to shake off the lingering dread, she pressed harder on the gas pedal, hoping to escape the haunting memory of the spectral patrons and the eerie waitress. But as she drove on, the road seemed to stretch infinitely, the same gnarled trees lining the way, their branches clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. Her heart pounded erratically in her chest as a fog descended, thick and suffocating, cloaking the road ahead. Panic clawed its way up her throat as she realized she couldn't see beyond a few feet. She slowed down, squinting through the fog, but the path remained obscured, engulfing her in an otherworldly haze. Shapes began to materialize in the mist, vague and shadowy at first, then growing more defined. Figures seemed to flit past her car, their faces twisted into grotesque masks of torment, their hands reaching out as if pleading for salvation. Lily's breaths came in ragged gasps, her hands trembling as she struggled to keep control of the car. The fog pressed in, thickening until she felt as though she was driving through a nightmare. Just as panic threatened to consume her entirely, the fog lifted as suddenly as it had descended. Lily found herself on a familiar stretch of road, the fog dissipating into the cool night air. Trembling, she glanced around, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Relief flooded her as she recognized the landmarks, a signpost indicating a nearby town, a familiar curve in the road. But as she drove on, a sense of unease lingered, gnawing at the edges of her mind. The night seemed endless, the road unyielding. Each passing mile felt like an eternity, the haunting memory of the spectral diner, and the ghostly figures etched into her consciousness. Finally, the first rays of dawn broke through the horizon, casting a golden hue over the landscape. Lily breathed a sigh of relief as she saw the familiar sights of civilization ahead, the town she had been aiming for all along. As she pulled into the gas station, the events of the night felt like a distant, twisted dream. She stepped out of the car, her legs still trembling, and glanced back at the road she had traveled. But when she turned to look, the highway stretched empty before her, devoid of the eerie diner or any trace of the supernatural fog. Was it a hallucination? A trick of the mind brought on by exhaustion and fear? Lily couldn't be certain. But one thing was clear. She would never forget the night she encountered that lonely diner on the backwoods highway, a place where the boundary between reality and the unknown seemed to blur into a chilling nightmare that lingered in the depths of her memory forever.